Over the past couple of weeks, we've been spending our time, I should say our learning objectives, on gross domestic product, how to calculate it from the expenditure approach, whereby we took the summation of consumption, government spending, gross private domestic investment, and net exports to arrive at gross domestic product, which is also referred to as our income level, which today is slightly greater than 15 trillion. From there, we moved on to focus on fiscal policy. Uh, this week, our focus, of course, is on the monetary side, dealing with banking here in the United States, dealing with monetary policy, that is the Federal Reserve, and of course on how money really does get created in our system. But what I want us to do right now is I want us to kind of go back in time, and I want us to kind of look at the U.S. budget. And from that standpoint, my title here, U.S. Budget in Simple English. I don't know about you, but I have a very, very hard time thinking in terms of trillions. I just can't wrap my arms around that concept. But before we kind of get down into the simple point of view on how to explain this, let's just take a look at our budget. The United States takes in right here $2.17 trillion. That would be from the standpoint of taxes from you, from corporations, etc. And if you look at the spending side, the government spends, wow, $3.8 trillion. Or the government spends 1.65 trillion more than it takes in. That is a problem. That is a federal deficit. And right now, the federal deficit, as a percentage of this $15 trillion GDP of ours, is in excess of 10%. Somewhere between 10 and 11%, just depends upon how those numbers come out. But let's just put it this way. Let's keep it simple. 10% of GDP is based on the federal deficit. As I pointed out here, 15 trillion. And what's very, very interesting about all this, last year, I guess Congress got serious about doing something about getting this deficit under control, and they said, okay, we're going to do it. They came up with a plan whereby they're going to cut spending up here by $38.5 billion. $38.5 billion. Now, I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to understand that that is something like, 2% of the deficit. But anyway, that's for another lecture. But that's our budget. And as I pointed out to you, it's very, very hard for me to wrap my arms around trillion. So what I thought it would be a good idea is, okay, let's remove some digits. Let's remove 8 digits, i.e., let's move that decimal point 8 places to the left, and let's just pretend it is your household budget. If that's the case, your annual family income is $21,700, and immediately I understand $21,700. Just once again by moving the decimal place 8 places to the left. Money spent by the family. Okay, let's just move the decimal place over here from federal spending 8 places to the left, and I get 38,200. Once again, I understand that, 38,200. And then the difference, we can see we are spending 16,500. You are spending 16,500 more than what you're taking in. Well, how can that happen? Well, the only way it can happen is that you start running up your credit cards, you take out new applications, get more credit cards, and max those out. Very similar to the deficit up here. We run a deficit of $1.65 trillion. The government has to make that deficit up. So therefore what happens? The Treasury must sell bills, bonds, and notes The Federal Reserve System, which is our learning goal, which is our learning, you might say, for this coming week, provides the liquidity for that all to happen. But back down here, okay, you just maxed out more cards. And, in other words, by maxing out more of your credit cards, you just add it to the total outstanding balance on your credit card. So, given this, you now owe $150,000. And you say to yourself, how can that be? I'm only taking in $21,700. I'm spending $38,200. I now have a debt balance of $150,000, and you say to yourself, I have to get serious about my spending problem. I have a spending problem. And you say, I'm going to do something this year. I'm going to cut my spending by $385. Well, I know what you're saying. That's ridiculous. There's no way I can continue to spend $38,200 when I only take in $21,700 and think by cutting back spending by $385 that I'm going to be okay, that I'm going to be all right, that it's going to be great. But it's not. But it's not. And therefore, that's kind of what I just wanted to indicate to you, just some very, very simple terms on how you can take our budget and relate it to your own household personal budget. Hopefully this helps.